Hello and welcome to the Leading Lounge. I'm your host, Dr. Justin Dubose. Here in the Leading Lounge, we talk with today's leaders and unpack lessons learned and being learned from a career of leading and communicating in their field. These conversations are designed to be both informal and informative, and we want to equip you with wisdom and tools to empower you as a leader where you are and where you want to be. Have you ever wanted to sit down with someone who has an amazing, fascinating job and just like a sponge soak up as much as you could from them? Well, today's your chance. We interview our A's, B's, and C's, administrators, bosses, and churches. And today I sat down with an A, an administrator, Kevin Pies. So Kevin is the executive director for Alliance Chaplain Ministries. And basically what that means is he is the representative from my denomination, the Christian and Missionary Alliance, often just shortened to the Alliance. You'll hear Kevin refer to the Alliance. And anyone who wants to be a federal chaplain with the Christian Missionary Alliance has to go through Kevin. So anyone who's a chaplain with the Alliance in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard Auxiliary, Civil Air Patrol, VA, federal prison chaplains, all that, they all go through Kevin. So he actually works with the DOD, the Department of Defense. He works with the national office for the denomination. He works with each district in the denomination. And altogether, he's got about 70 folks who serve as chaplains. He's got about another 15 who are candidates, meaning they're in school to become chaplains. And he's got another 65 or so applicants who would like to be chaplains with the Alliance. And his leadership role is so fascinating. He has to keep in touch with people who are literally all over the world at any given moment and celebrate what they do. They're out doing these incredible things. And Kevin has to find ways to take all of these puzzle pieces and somehow make narrative stories out of them and share the good things that are going on. And he, in fact, he was in Hawaii when we conducted this interview and was telling me that he'll be in Germany at some point to visit our chaplains who are over in Europe and to conduct some training over there. And my favorite part about this interview with Kevin was the principles that he unpacked are not just specific to what he does. He talked about his own journey to get where he was. He retired as a colonel from the Army, a chaplain colonel, served 26 years. And he talked about, for those times that you as a leader feel like you just have to do everything on your own, what do you do there? Balancing things, communicating with people who are so widely dispersed, celebrating people, and really a great interview. Great guy. I'm so blessed to know him and privileged to serve with him and under him and with him being my endorser. So be blessed by this interview today and take notes because he's full of wisdom. All right. Thanks for joining us here for our next episode of the Leading Lounge. I'm excited to bring to you a very special guest who has a long history of service. So Kevin, thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time and sharing with us what you do and how you do it. And rather than me give an introduction for you, can we start this by you just telling us a little bit about yourself and your background and all that?
Sure. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to join you today. This is so awesome. And thank you for your initiative, your creativity, innovation, all of that great stuff. So Justin, you're awesome. And I really appreciate dialing into Baytown once in a while and then giving you a call. And you might be on your way to California as a reserve chaplain, just doing all this great stuff. So it's a delight. Yeah, my name is Kevin Pies, and I'm a retired Army chaplain after 26 years. Retired as a colonel. I survived, and it was a little bit difficult. It was kind of a challenge to get in, but once I get in, I loved every minute of it. And I've been with the Alliance for those years. The first year, I went with an independent group, and I really needed a family, so I just went back to the Alliance, and I said, hey, would you accept me as a chaplain? Air Force rejected me.
Of course they did.
I don't know why. Of course. They said, hey, we got enough.
God had better plans for you, Kevin.
Oh, man. And then the Army said, sure, we'll take you. So I don't know, maybe the standards were low enough where they took me on board. But I really, really enjoyed it. So I retired 2 years ago and currently the executive director for the Alliance Chaplain Ministries. And that means that I work with the military and the federal chaplains. And that includes the VA, the federal prisons, to also include the Civil Air Patrol, biggest youth group in America. You know, there's a lot of kids in that Civil Air Patrol learning one day to be pilots, and then the Coast Guard Auxiliary too. All these neat opportunities. So institutional chaplains, the districts handle them, and I work with the military and federal chaplains.
Okay, cool. So I've always known your title to be a chaplain endorser from inside the Army as a chaplain, right? So can you tell us, in that role as the executive director or as the endorser, what exactly do you do as a chaplain endorser?
Yeah, the title executive director is the title that the Alliance gave me, and the ecclesiastical endorser is the title or the position that the military puts on you. So an endorser is almost like, okay, I'm the one guy in all of the denomination that's registered with the Pentagon and DOD. So they don't want a lot of phone calls. They don't want, mamas and papas calling the Pentagon saying, hey, how come my son or my daughter's not a chaplain? They want to hear from pies. So I'm able to give them a call, registered. They know who it is who's calling. Certain benefits that go with that. I'm able to get into restricted access areas in a limited way, but just bona fide with DOD and then available to the denomination to represent the denomination. So I've been thinking a lot about this. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready, man. Hit me.
It's almost like I said the other day at a conference that I'm kind of like Colonel Tom Parker. I see this amazing talent, this Elvis guy, and then I want to promote him. But then that might not be the best illustration to use because the conference was full of a lot of young people, and I wondered if they even knew who Elvis was,
That's true.
So we're going back, and so an endorsing agent is almost like a talent scout that's out there looking for guys and men and women that are called to ministry, and they want to do that within the context of the military or federal chaplaincy. So I'm always looking and not really recruiting off of other teams, but when people call me, I say, okay, let's explore this. Let's talk about your calling. Let's talk about which branch you want to go into. Are you getting your education all squared away? Are you getting your denominational requirements squared away too? So kind of help. It's almost like a liaison, helping these folks off the street, like I was, civilian to military or federal, and then helping them find the ministry within that context.
Okay, excellent. How many, you've got all kind of different chaplains. You've got guys like me who are in the reserves. You got active duty guys. How many do you have all together? Do you know?
We have 70. And the nice thing about being at the national office is I went down to the basement, went into the archives. World War II, we had 28 chaplains, mostly Army, all Army. And then in 1994, we had 44. And then now we have 70. And so the program's kind of steadily grown. And, there's attrition and then there's gains and losses. And so we have all kinds of chaplains. We've got 4 in the VA, got a federal prison chaplain. It's a dark environment, but the ministry's good with the prisoners. Sometimes it's that the requirements that the government puts on you that are cumbersome. But man, that is a challenge, but they're so needy there. So we have a 70-year-old that contacted me and he said, hey, I want to be a chaplain. I said, you're a little old. And he said, no. I saw that post in the Civil Air Patrol. And again, there must be like 25,000 kids across the nation who are one day going to go out and fly big multi-million-dollar planes. And so right now they're in a program. And he said, I want to go and I want to do leadership development. And he was ordained an international worker from China. He had all the credentials and he just loved life. He's wearing the uniform, total volunteer. So wow. It's really cool. So I love him. And we have a Coast Guard auxiliary guy. And then most of our chaplains are Army, but the Air Force is growing. Wow. and then the Navy and Marines. They're pretty steady. That's growing a little bit. So it's diverse.
Yeah.
It's pretty broad.
Yeah, it is. It is. So with all that going on, you have one of the most complicated leadership roles of anyone I know. So you work with the national office for the denomination. You work with all these districts, geographic districts and otherwise. Every branch of the military, you've got federal civilian chaplains, civil air patrol, all of that. So how do you juggle all of that, and how do you prioritize different relationships and demands? Because you got to have different voices kind of screaming at you at different times for different things.
Wow, Justin, that's a difficult question to answer, because it seems like when I was in the military, you know what it's like. You're like on duty 24/7, and you've got this massive to-do list, and you want to just try to take care of it all. I've kind of found out that in these last 2 years, I've had to cut back and try to get as much done as I can. And so for me, the big theme has been making the connection. There's a lot of work to be done, and I think it's growing and doing well. So on the one hand, I'm a promoter. On the other hand, I'm a recruiter. On the other hand, I'm a negotiator. On the other hand, I'm trying to sell the chaplain program to different people who may not understand it. And so all the time, just trying to make the connection, working with the applicant, making a phone call to the recruiter, talking to another endorsing agency, maybe another denomination. So trying to make all these connections, and at the same time, trying to give valued time to each one of our chaplains, our chaplain candidates, and our applicants as well. And so with the personalized touch, that really works well for us. And so it's been growing. I don't know if I juggle it well, but it just seems like I have to try to prioritize more now. Almost like every day, what's the most important thing I got to do today, and just try to get it done, And you experience that too. I know you were better at it. You are better at it than I was. I just seem like, okay, I'm just going to try to get everything done today. But now it's trying. Let's see what I can get done today, and who can I help the most?
Yeah, there's a quote from an economist that I really like named Thomas Sowell, and he said, "There are no solutions, only trade-offs." And I found trying to juggle reserve stuff, church stuff, family stuff, that I give up on the idea that there's solutions to all these problems every day, but there's just trade-offs. So who do I need to spend time with today? But in your case, you've got even more of those balls kind of up in the air. So have you found that, like with social media, for example, do you find that to be a helpful thing in terms of making contact and relationships and such?
Oh, yes, I think so. Boy, the biggest theme for my last 2 years, since I started this position, is making the connection. So, man, oh man, on the one hand, I'm broadcasting, celebrating all of the great things our chaplains are doing. For example, I got a pretty active Facebook page, but also a couple other links that go into official workers page, job recruiting page, internal national office staff page. And in the beginning, I was doing it like every other day. Hey, here's a chaplain. Here's a chaplain story. Here's something great going on overseas. And somebody gave me some feedback. And I guess this deals with the communication piece you're going to talk to me about a little bit later on. But they gave me some communication. Hey, you're putting too much on there. It's all great, but you're just giving us too much. Give us a breather,
Yeah. Interesting.
So, yeah, I try to post 2 times a week now. And if I let it go, then I'm like not feeling guilty about that. Like, oh, gee, I didn't post today. But man, oh, man, it's been good for our chaplain program, because I'll post a story, and I've been doing it for about 1.5 years now, and I really haven't done too many stories on the same person. It seems like I'll go to another chaplain. Hey, I was in Jordan and all of these baptisms happened. Or, hey, I was at chapel. Or, hey, I was at Fort Knox and I was with all the ROTC. It just seems like even now I got 20 stories that I've got to tell. But then again, space them out so it's palatable. So the other part of that is that as people read them, because so many of our chaplains are solid alliance, somebody will say, oh, we're praying for Chaplain and Mrs. So-and-so. They were in our church 20 years ago, and they were our youth pastor. They were our children's worker, or they were our assistant. And I'm like, wow, see, again, making the connections.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, oh, I wonder what happened to them. And oh my goodness, there's a lot of great ministry going on in military federal environment. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. So you paved a nice on-ramp for me, Kevin, into one of my next questions, but is one of the most important aspects of leadership is supporting your people, celebrating your people, and you've got a lot of people to support and to celebrate. And I know because I am a chaplain and I have my own chaplains that I oversee that you've got chaplains out there doing amazing things every day. Like you mentioned, baptisms in Jordan and just amazing ministry ideas and things that they're doing. So how do you stay abreast of what they're doing, and how do you communicate it, and how do you celebrate it?
Oh, man. So used to be that we just kind of collected all this information at the end of the year report. Hey, what did you do this year? Oh, I preached 20 times, and 15. And I find that people forget a lot.
Oh, for sure.
I mean? And then I'm not saying you're guilty of this. You wouldn't be this guilty of this at all, I'm sure. But some people are like, oh, gee, I got to get this done in 15 minutes and get it off my plate.
Yeah.
So those are interesting, though. Those are still valuable because I do collect all of those. Then I compile them. Then I compile the data. And then I present it to the leadership. And they're like, oh, my goodness, our chaplains are really busy. Mm-hmm. Yes, these are the numbers. And then I start picking and choosing. I'll find out, Justin, hey, what did he do? Oh, he just got his doctorate. Wow. And then he struggled through this, and he asked me there's the story right there. And right. He asked me, hey, do we have other chaplains that would be able to help me out with this doctorate? And so I'm like, yeah, shoot. So we're making all these connections and putting them all together. And then I kind of watch and almost like a private eye, I wonder what's Justin up to lately?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Did you know he's got this podcast going and he's got 2 followers, or he's got, 3,000. But one of our spouses, hey, it's growing though, right? Right, Justin?
One at a time.
One at a time. Making a connection, one person at a time. But one of our chaplains, his wife, has a podcast also. So you be encouraged. She's got 20,000 followers.
Wow.
And it's started small and it grew and grew, just a little bit
Amazing.
At a time.
Yeah.
So, and then if what would be nice is if all of our chaplains would package and send me something that's just so postable, like in a Facebook format. But, they'll send me storyboards or they'll text me or, I might have to go back and inquire. Hey, can you tell me a little bit more about this time at Fort Knox? What'd you do? I have a suspicion, but I like to hear from them and them give me the greater details. Last year had a story writer or a freelance writer helping me out. And that was good. That got this whole thing going of what are our chaplains doing and celebrating. Because everybody likes to be affirmed, I would say.
Yeah, sure. I heard a quote recently that was talking about I think it was talking specifically about nonprofits, but how do you convey all the wonderful things that are going on? And they said, numbers tell, but stories sell. So, it's good to know, man, we did 100 of these, but if each number represents a story, part of the challenge that I find is how do you, whether it's in my church with my chaplains I oversee or whatever, all right, I got these numbers. You did 5 of these things, 5 counselings, I'll say. Can you tell me one that just, is just a really great story that helps me highlight what you're doing? And so I can imagine that's challenging for you to get 70 people who are all off doing different things and they forget because I forget because you've got so many different things going on, and capturing those stories seems like a real challenge.
Yeah, and you're busy too. You got a church you're leading, you're trying to develop leadership, you're doing this podcast. Then tomorrow, I think you go to California, right?
I do, yeah. Hopping on a plane tomorrow, yep.
Yeah. Now, can we just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, what do you want to talk about?
let's just use that as an example. So, man, you don't know how many times I tell people, we got a guy in Baytown and he drills in California. He's got guys spread out all over. Well, that kind of takes him away from his church one weekend a month. Well, there's a great opportunity for the elders to say, hey, the pastor's gone this week. Let's run the church.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So leadership kind of steps up. Then as well, you're kind of keeping your hand into the global perspective of what's going on. Because, California, you're out there, then what's going on over here? I'm in Hawaii today, and for breakfast, there were about 3 guys in Army uniforms. So I'm like, I want to go in there and ask them their life story and who's their chaplain. And
right, yeah.
And they're kind of like, hey, go away, must be a spy or something like that. Get out of here. And they're from Fort Lewis. They're here TDY or temporary duty. So the military's paying them to come to Hawaii for business. I'm like, that's so phenomenal.
Yes. Yeah, no, there's so many benefits. And I tell people all the time, it's one of my selling points for the reserve chaplaincy for people who are maybe not feeling called a full-time active duty ministry, but they want to be a pastor. Is my selling point is in my church, you have one set of problems. If you like a microscope, you have kind of a microscope view on people because everyone lives in the same zip code and knows kind of the same people, has kind of the same routines. But then when you step outside of that, and for me, when you go to California, there's a whole different crop of people, and it's different issues and different perspectives and different life problems and different level of things that you're dealing with. And so I tell them, look, when I bring those things back from California back home into my local church, it helps me with my perspective. It helps me be more conscientious of the people that aren't in my church but live where we live. It just kind of, I feel like, helps you be a better, more well-rounded, I guess, Christian, pastor, chaplain, whatever. So there's my plug for the
global. Yeah, good. Gives you a global perspective, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah, global perspective. I like that. I like that phrase you use.
Now, here's another connection, if I could. Resonate was our new workers seminar last week. It's a week-long program where you come in and bring new Alliance workers. Hey, we love you, and here's all the great things that the Alliance is doing. So we had a lunch, and hey, come find out about the military chaplaincy. So I thought, okay, golly, make a connection again. So I asked the state chaplain for Ohio to come over 10 minutes away. So it was easy for him to come over.
Yeah.
He said, I love to. And he's a good Nazarene guy. And then he comes, and then he says to me that they just picked up a partnership with another nation. And I think it's about a 5-year-old partnership. So he's been to this nation. He's been back. He's had their chaplains come. And I couldn't believe it, but they partnered with the country of Ukraine.
Wow.
So it's like, wow, okay, Ukraine's been in the news. I know. Wonder what's going on there. He's got the inside scoop of what's going on there. I'm sure he's communicating with those chaplains. So then we got another chaplain that's active duty, and he's in Poland right now. And he's right on the edge of the country there, finding out what's going on in Poland. So then, in Ohio, there's international workers, and they're going to go back to Poland because they used to be in Ukraine. So you bring all those people together, there's a bigger dialogue that happens instead of just like, oh man, gas prices are pretty high.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's hot outside today, huh? Those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
Well, one of the focuses of the podcast is on communicating. So one of my favorite questions to ask everybody I have on is, tell us about a time when you failed at communicating. Could be big, could be small, anywhere in between. But with a focus on what you learned from it and how did it change your approach to communication, if at all?
I would say every time I preach, it's a failure to communicate. You know what I mean? And the reason I say that is I do prepare, I do study, but then I'm like, at the end of it, I'm like, okay, did I really communicate what I wanted to communicate? And I think, wow, okay, I totally missed. It used to be, but you develop in that. You try to communicate more. And it felt like the feedback that I got was genuine instead of, everybody walking out the door, good sermon, pastor, good sermon,
right.
Pastor. No, I like it when they say, boy, we're learning so much about Daniel or Joseph in the Old Testament. Man, I can't believe that. I didn't know that. That's when it's like, okay, well, maybe I'm communicating enough to get some dialogue going,
Right.
you know? So I personally like the one-on-one because you can get immediate feedback and you can take it where they're going, and they may not be understanding, so you can back up a little bit. And the preaching is good communication. So as I go out, they always ask me in the Alliance, hey, you come to this district conference, can you take 10 minutes and tell us about the chaplain? So then I'm thinking, okay, don't just give them the same old statistics you give them every time, but hey, did you know Ohio is partnered with Ukraine? Or did you know that there's 6 Air National Guard openings in your state? They're begging for chaplains. And so you always want to try to keep current, keep real, keep not entertaining, because we're not really,
but maybe engaging.
Engaging, yeah, that's a great word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so failed, and I really didn't fail when I was preaching. Tried to give the best I could, but sometimes you do communicate things and people totally misread it. Hasn't happened a lot, but it could be an email. Happened the other day with somebody that I received an email. I read it totally different than a district superintendent. So it's like, okay, I see where, and I just called the guy, cleared it up. Is this what you were saying? No, I was saying something else. And okay, good. I'll help you. Went back, re-engaged, and got it going, and took it to the next step.
Yeah. So maybe if there's any question, slowing down instead of just jumping on it, slowing down and making sure this is what you said, right? Yep, that's what I said. Okay, good. Let's go.
Yeah, and getting to the point where it's not so much, okay, I said everything I wanted to say. I'm done. See you later. But communication is much more than that, much more than loading up 30 minutes of all I want to say, but considering your audience. Yeah, it is all that feedback that you learned in high school. You got feedback, the listener, the talker. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. All right. So another question that I love to ask everybody, Kevin, is if the present you could visit with the younger you, right? If you could go back in time to when you were maybe just a little more handsome, a little more collagen in the skin or something, I don't know. What advice about leadership would you give yourself?
That's almost like a Marty McFly, isn't it? And I would love to do that. Go back to 73 and meet my dad 6 months before he died, and just thank him again. You always kind of want to turn back the clock. But if I could go back, I was talking to somebody about this last night, because I gave my faith, or put my faith in Christ. 2 weeks later, I was on my way to Bible college. I had no idea what to do. I didn't know the difference between sanctification, justification, glorification, designation, whatever. But I went and learned so much. And I thought in the beginning I had to do everything. I had to be Mr. Superstar.
Yep.
I had to have all the gifts. Man, oh man. So a pastor asked me to come over and help him to do a church plant. He asked me to lead the singing. All I knew about singing was there was some guy in a church before that had waved his hand. I didn't know what the hell about. And then as time went on, by experimenting, so that's good, but by experimenting, I found out that there are certain things I can do very, very well, and other things I'm just terrible at. So not everybody's got the gifts. You're unique. If I went back, I'd just say, hey, Pies, grow, learn every day, but you be the best you that God's created you to be,
Yeah, for sure. I was just telling somebody that my own leadership journey, I said, every time I pause and reflect, I think I feel like I should really know what I'm learning about myself right now. But the more I do stuff, the more you learn, maybe I'm really not as gifted at that as I thought, or maybe, there's so much more fruit over here than I expected there to be. And so, yeah, just those periodic self-examinations or something. And yeah, it makes you more comfortable with being and embracing the way God made you and leading from that place.
Yeah. You raise a good point there. And the thing that helped me the most was taking a course called Strength Finders, SDI development. Mm-hmm. And instead of focusing on your weaknesses and encouraging you to sharpen those, we kind of grow up, hey, you're weak in this area, work on it.
Right.
If you're bad at passing, if by going out and for 3 weeks straight, just passing, you'll be better at it.
Right.
But this guy, he came in and said, go with your strengths. Are you a tight end, or are you a defensive or safety, or are you really the quarterback?
Right.
Go play your position well. And so I found out that I was just a great encourager.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was
So
like, okay,
lean into it.
yeah, Lord, help me to encourage Justin today, man.
No, and I'll tell you one thing I'm learning right now, Kevin, is, and again, it's one of those where you would think you should have learned this already, but is because my tendency is not to do too little, mine is to do too much. So I hyperextend myself. And one of the convictions I've been wrestling with as far as, leading from your strengths kind of thing is when I'm trying to do more than I ought to, or kind of I'm focusing on the weaknesses, I'm also preventing someone else who may have that strength from growing. The whole body of Christ picture is everybody, God put it together just as he wanted it to be. And if I let other people lean into their strengths and I lean into mine, everybody wins, and the body functions much better than if I'm trying to do all the parts and move everything all myself,
Yeah. Hey, so it's like, number one, you can't do everything. Number two, you just got to go to bed and not feel guilty about doing everything that day. And then, you're right, because some people come forward and say, hey, can I help you with that? And you're like, oh, please.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And everybody wins, and the mission gets accomplished a little better. So, all right, Kevin, if you could pass on one lesson, any lesson, to our audience of 2 subscribers, as you said, what would it be?
Go ahead and tell a friend about this podcast. Justin, oh man, I just say 2 things. You be you, pies is pies for a reason, and I don't need to feel guilty about that.
Yeah.
And the Lord has been working in my life as well as Justin's life, everybody, your listeners' lives, just to sharpen them and help them. He's got a plan and a path for them, and it's so unique to the next guy. So I would say, you be you, and you can't roll back the clock. Everything that you experience is for the good of the Lord. And so don't beat yourself up over failures, and go with the things that, hey, Lord, forgive me for that, and move on. Don't just carry that baggage.
Yeah.
So second thing I've learned too is that you've got a rucksack or a backpack. Don't fill it up too much with stuff that is not going to be good for you. You've got the essentials, but if you put too much stuff in there and you're starting to add stuff in your life and it's getting to be a little bit dangerous, don't mess with that. You can only carry that so far, So carry the load that the Lord gives you,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great advice. All right, I'm going to go off script. So you did 26 years, you said, in the military?
26 years in the military. Yeah, retired as a colonel. Amazed even myself.
26 years is a long time. So what's the single greatest story? People in the military, I've found, have all these crazy experiences and all these amazing stories of things that they did or saw or were a part of. You have one story from 26 years that just sticks out as kind of the greatest experience you've had?
Wow. It could be a war story. It could be helping a young soldier 20 years later. He calls me up. Hey, you saved my life. You didn't even know it. Could be any of that. But, hey, Justin, okay, so I'm going to get personal now. The Army has really been a family. I know people say it's a machine, and it'll grind you up and spit you out. As soon as you're done, they say next, please, and get the next social security number in there, get a guy in to replace you. But right in the middle of it, my wife, first wife, came down with cancer, 2008, passed away. And I had general officers calling me, with condolences. And then, like the church gets together meals and brings them over, like sergeants, staff sergeants in my unit, they were bringing me meals, and they were, hey, we're sorry to hear what happened, So I was like, wow, they really took and embraced me and helped me through a dark period of my life.
Yeah.
So then I let it go. Chaplain Carver, chief of chaplains. Hey, I'd like you to come up, be my XO. I was the stunt double, Hey, sir, if a bullet comes your way, I'm jumping in front of it. So I went to the Pentagon, and I was on my own for quite a bit. And then the Lord brought another wonderful woman into my life. There was a party at the Pentagon. I saw this lady. I was like, no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. My chaplain buddies are saying, go for it, go for it. So I asked her out on a date, and now I'm remarried to a wonderful Brazilian lady. And she's kind of like my sergeant major. I take her along, and I go one way and she goes the other way, and then we compare notes. And so all through that experience, God provided for me two wonderful ladies, and totally content now, just really so appreciative. And we get to share in ministry together. It's just been so phenomenal. But the military did that. Mm-hmm. I had a zero balance on the medical bills. Lord's taking care of us now. And I just was so amazed. You think it's a machine. It's designed for war fighting. But in many ways, the military and the people in the military, you give out to others, they come back and they give out to you as well. And man, I needed that.
Yeah.
So that to me is the biggest. That means more than getting mortared, IED blowing up behind your back tire on the road, getting shot at. The way that the military has been a family to me, I just love every minute of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tell people the same thing. The machine thing, it's like, yeah, of course the Army's a machine and it can grind you up and it gets kind of exhausting. But when I think about how much better I am as a person because of the experiences of the military and the people I've met, I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it for the world. It really is a wonderful place, despite all of its inherently governmental flaws. It's really good. And that's a cool story. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you. It's kind of a personal story, but again, how many people, even in Vietnam, 2 years, they've got so many personal stories,
Mm-hmm.
So it's been good for me.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, for folks who may want to find out more about you or reach out to you, if you have somebody listening who is curious about the chaplaincy, wants to be a chaplain, where should they reach out to you? Where should they go?
Yeah, they can do a Google search and just do Christian Missionary Alliance Chaplains or Alliance Chaplain Ministries or Executive Director Kevin Pies. But I can give you an email address here as well. Love to hear from anybody that's interested, even if and I get a lot of this too. Hey, we're praying for you guys and the chaplains and their families in the military. So that's awesome. They can drop me a line. Here's the email address. It's chaplains, plural, chaplains at CM Alliance, which stands for Christian Missionary Alliance.org. So chaplains at CMAlliance.org.
Sounds great. And just to help you out with that, because I get a lot of people in the military that spell chaplain like Charlie Chaplin is
Chaplain.
CHAPLAINS at CMAlliance.org.
Yeah, plain as day, not Charlie Chaplin with the mustache.
Oh, man. Well, Kevin, I really appreciate you taking a few minutes and sharing with us some of your story, what you do, some tools and some wisdom. So thank you very much. And I hope that in some way, somehow, this amount of time you've given me translates to more folks reaching out, more chaplains coming in, chaplains being encouraged, chaplains sending you stories and empowers you to do what you do better.
Thank you, Justin. Man, it's been an honor to be a part of this. And I know it's going to grow. You are a phenomenal leader. Really appreciate everything you're doing, even when you go tomorrow to California. And bless you there in the ministry of the church, too. Man, any church would be able to say, I love Justin. I'm glad he's our pastor. He and his family are awesome.
Well, appreciate it, Kevin. And thank you guys for tuning in. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us today. The Leading Lounge is brought to you by Communicate to Care, where we are building better leaders by building better people. For more information, visit us online at www.communicatetoCare.com. This is your host, Dr. Justin Dubose, and we'll see you next time, right here in the Leading Lounge.